Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Thinking Project, where we give you actionable advice from real life stories of entrepreneurs and business owners. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to hear a special offer from me and from a new venture I have going on, because I think you'll really enjoy it. But I interviewed Todd Randall today, who believes that even normal people can become entrepreneurs and you don't have to fall into a viral fad or spend millions of dollars to get into small business. In fact, Todd started a small business, retail business, learned all of his lessons, and started the long road of growth and scale. So one of the main takeaways I got from this episode, though, was that it's easier to run multiple businesses over one. So to hear that story and all the lessons he taught in that, please welcome Todd Randall and share this with your friends. And I hope you really enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening. All right, we're good to go, Todd. Thank you so much for joining me. By the way, I'm really glad that our teams got together and made this happen, and I'm really excited to hear about this. Now, I know you have a lot of businesses. We talked about this before, but I'd love for you to tell us in your own words, introduce yourself and what you do, and how you got to this point, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. By the way, I really enjoyed our first conversation. I appreciate taking the time to get to know somebody in that way. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I think my kind of mantra is that I'm just a regular guy who wanted a different lifestyle. And I think a lot of people are after that right now. So it's kind of apropos, people are thinking about how can I change my work-life balance, or how can I work at home more, or how can I do my own thing? And I'm a guy who's accomplished that. So it's interesting just to kind of throw it into the mix and talk about it right now. I'm a pharmacist, actually.
Oh, wow.
And so I practiced for a couple of years and really enjoyed it, and just thought, well, I want to do more. I'm a business guy at heart. So I went to industry, and I worked for industry for a long time. Learned lots of skills. I had an entrepreneurial spirit, but I didn't really have anything to sink my teeth into. So I just, I learned the lessons of the big corporate gig for a while. And then when I finally felt ready, too late probably, I could have done it way earlier, but I started one business, and it was as overwhelming as anybody's first business was. And I didn't like it. It was not an improvement. And so I kind of built, foundation and a structure and a process where I could run businesses, small businesses, without it killing me. And that's probably my claim to fame. So now I have 4 businesses running remotely, and I still travel quite a bit, and I'm an athlete. So you don't have to be there every day, not for every business. Some of them you do, yes. But I think I'm just an example of it, a little different type of business person that's a little bit of anyone can do it, and a little bit of, special skills and special programs can help you, overcome your obstacles.
Yeah. I already love where this conversation is going, because one of my favorite things to talk about during these podcasts is like the journey of stepping maybe out, in your case, out of like the corporate world and into your own venture. But what I'm really curious about, and what I love to focus on, not necessarily focus on, but a place to start, because this is where a lot of people, like, it resonates with a lot of people, at least that I've learned, is that you stepped out of the corporate world, in your words, maybe a little too late, but your first business did not do well. Can you talk us through like your first experience stepping out and then it not working out the way maybe you thought it would?
Yeah, 'cause the business actually did, from a profit and loss, or like a ROI perspective, was doing quite well. It just, I wasn't measuring my success by dollars at that point, because I was a corporate bureaucrat the year before, and I was making gobs of money. And I think lots of people have this revelation. Well, I hope that many people have this revelation. It's a good problem to have, right? It was where you're working hard and you've accomplished some of the things that you set out to do. And just like a dog who's chasing a car, it's a fair question. What if they catch it? What then? Right? And so I had a fancy title. I was living outside the country on an expat assignment. I was making, it's all relative, of course, right? But to me, I grew up in a trailer park in the middle of nowhere. And for me, I was making gobs of money. Could do anything I want. And then, can I tell a story? This is my favorite revelation
Yes,
story.
go
So
for it.
I was on this assignment where I was getting a lot out of it, super satisfied, getting lots of kudos from my corporate team. I was reporting to the CEO of a $300 billion corporation, right? And I was living in Europe at the time and building them a business plan to help them start a division in Europe. And very, very fun. Like I was really looking forward to staying there and helping build it and everything. And that was right before the crash of 2007, 2008. And my corporate team was savvy and they're like, we feel strong headwinds. We'd like to bring you home. And I was really, really sad. Like I was on the tear. I was right in the middle of something that was really satisfying. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to take a little bit of time off because I've been working overtime for 2 years on this project. I said, yeah, great, no problem. Why don't you report to work in 45 days, which was extremely generous of them at the time. I really, respected them for giving me a little time. So I went to Paris. I lived nearby and I joined one of those language programs. I don't know if you've ever done this before. Well, you live in Utah and people are extremely language savvy in Utah. So maybe you are aware, but they have these schools everywhere in the world where you can go somewhere and attend like a high school student where you attend class during the morning and have conversational studies. So I did that, all morning for a month. And then in the afternoons, I would go museum hunting or golfing with friends or, dinner with new friends or what have. And it was a very social, interesting, fun month. And at the end of the month, I looked down at my tab for all of it. And it was like 0.00 something percent of what I made during the month. And I thought, wow, if it's not expensive, to have the best month of my life, this changes everything. Because before I was on this assignment, I was living in a very expensive city with a very expensive car, and I was dressing to the nines because I wanted to impress my corporate friends. And I was trying to go to charity galas and all the stuff you do as a 30-something-year-old, trying to impress your neighbors, right? And I had a run rate that was like I was spending a lot of money every month. And here I am in some foreign city, in an affordable apartment, making new friends. And when I added up at the end of the month, it was like a couple $1,000s. And I know that a couple $1,000s is not nothing. Like some people's struggle to get a couple grand a month. But remember at the time that I was a corporate mid-level executive. I was making lots of money, and to think that I could live, that my income needed to be a fraction of what it was, really put my mind in a different place. And I thought, well, geez, what could I do? What kind of work could I do to have this kind of lifestyle and take all the pressure off? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. No, when you were saying that, when you were giving that story and you said, I tried to write it down, but you said if it's, if it's not expensive to have like fun and live like that, right? Like
Yeah.
what are we doing? Right.
What am I doing? Because I was, this is a little cliche, but I think a lot of your listeners may, they may associate with this a little, or it may resonate with them is the word I was looking for. I had started to gain a little weight. I had fallen out of good habits. My sleep patterns had been interrupted because I was, flights and alarm clocks and early calls and late calls and all that kind of stuff. My marriage had disintegrated. I just worked myself out of it. Lots of folks do that, right? I wasn't taking care of myself. And so for this month, I would get up in the morning, I would go to the gym and then go to class and meet young, interesting, fun people. And then I would go see new things in the afternoon, socialize at night. And it was costing me a fraction of what I expected my normal lifestyle to make. And I thought, wow, I've been living my whole life hoping to do this someday. And I didn't realize that I could stop right now. I could stop right now and have this if I just changed my perspective a little bit.
Mm, yeah. And that just brings up so many cool things because I like how you mentioned like, a couple grand a month might be a lot to somebody, but I think it's all relative. And that's the point you were making, right? Is like,
Yeah.
if people just realized like, if they took their, their ideal, whatever, their ideal scenario and put that on paper and tried to like, have this like maybe counterintuitive approach was is like actually math it out and see how
Yeah.
much it would take. You'd
Yeah.
be surprised, which is
It helped me so
great.
much. And I've made this decision a few times in life based on that experience. based on that very experience, it just helped me think things differently. Like I'll tell you a good example. When I was in Europe, I went to an event some night. It was maybe a charity event where, everyone met at a restaurant and everyone threw $10 into a bucket and then they donated it to the local health charity or something, right? And I was with some friends from France, different culture than mine. And someone came up and the first thing they said is, "Oh, Barbara, you look so lovely tonight. Whatever have you done with your pretty blue dress?" And it took a second for us to sink in, but I'm like, I knew something was weird about that expression, right? Did you catch it? Like when you heard that, did it sit? It didn't resonate, right? For whatever reason.
It definitely sounded weird.
Because in America, you would never wear the same dress out twice, right? Like if someone came up to you and said, "Well, what about your blue dress? I like the way you looked in that last week," you'd be mortified because like, "Oh my God, you remember what I wore last week? And now I wore it again. You must think I have a small closet." And it was one of those things where my friends had one good suit and the ladies had 2 or 3 nice dresses, and their closets, like if you ever travel in Europe, you notice the closets are smaller than ours. And there's a reason for that, is because they just don't value hoarding clothes like Americans do. It's a cultural difference, not good or bad. It's
Sure.
cool to have lots of options too. I like that here. But it made me think, oh gosh, how much money do I spend on clothes a month? Well, I was spending a lot. So it's one of those ways where you look at your budget and you think, well, I have to have X thousand dollars set aside for clothes, or I won't be looking as nice as my colleagues at work. And you can turn that on its head and say, I can choose to wear whatever the hell I want and leave it up to them to judge or not judge. It's not my problem. Right?
Yeah. Right.
If it gets me closer to my goals. If that means I'm able to put $300 a month into a kitty that allows me to retire at 44 instead of 65, then you just have to weigh the thing. Yes, are people going to snicker sometimes that I'm wearing khakis and a a practical button-down shirt? Let them snicker. Like,
Yeah.
What do you lose from that? Nothing. You know what I gain? I gain retiring 19 years early.
Yeah, that's what's up. I just like that mindset shift though, because I wish that people, that's a hard one to drill home though, because to drill home, excuse me, I can't talk
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Because so many people get caught up in what other people think. And I was listening to one of my favorite authors, Mark Manson, and he was quoting someone else, but
Yeah.
I heard him say like, you'll stop caring about how much other people think of you when you realize how little they do.
How little they think of you.
Right? Like everybody's just so focused on themselves. And if you take the time and just realize that, people are just going to do whatever they're going to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I really like I really love that story of going to Paris and realizing that you can have a lot of fun and it doesn't, and you can have a lot of fun, in your own way and not, and have the lifestyle that you wanted. Like it was just that,
Yeah.
it's just that shift, right? That a lot of people. So what was it for you that helped you realize that? I mean, obviously you tallied it up at the end, but
Mhm.
I mean, what kind of place did you have to be in to really accept that in your head? Because some people get there and they don't, right?
And they don't pull the trigger. Yeah. I was saving. And I think that was one of the things that helped me is I was thinking, okay, so where do I want to be when I grow up, right? When I get older.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, well, I want a little place in the country and that requires buying the land and I have to build a house. And, I was thinking about what my family might look like and where I would live. And I had a number in mind in my head that I was building towards in order to accomplish that. And it seemed like such a Herculean task, right? And the big change for me really is, remember, this is only a dozen years ago. Okay,
Mhm.
maybe 15, but the number was between like $2,000 and $3,000 a month. Now think about all the people that can't afford that.
What's up, everybody? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Norm Wilkinson, the Happy Health Insurance Guy. You know that if you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, 1099 employee, finding the right health insurance can be a pain. Not anymore. With Norm, he is an entrepreneur, he is a business owner, so he understands the challenges that we all face every day with health insurance, with finding the right price. And that means that he's better equipped to help us all find the right coverage at the right price. So visit his website, thehappyhealthinsuranceguy.com, or give him a call at 801 801-687-9191 for a free consultation and policy review. Having a relationship-oriented health insurance agent that will take the time to customize your coverage is amazing, and not just another dude at a call center. So give him a call, 801-687-9191, or visit him at thehappyhealthinsuranceguy.com. Let him give you a policy review and a free consultation, and it'll be the best decision you ever made. Thank you so much for listening.
School teachers and, construction workers and police officers and fire people, like, it really does include a large portion of the workforce that could. And when I started to tell that story, it sounded glamorous, didn't it? I'm living in a foreign city. I'm going to the opera. I'm golfing with friends. I'm socializing. And there's something about it that is irreconcilable, right? A very glamorous lifestyle on a very small budget. Now that wouldn't work everywhere, right? Because there's some cities that are more expensive than others. And if I had a family with me there, that would have been more expensive. And if I had healthcare concerns, that would change the equation. But for me, this is just one place, one reality. It was a showcase. It just helped me think of it differently and said, okay, let's assume that I am, with a family someday. Let's assume that I am caring for some healthcare concern. Let's assume that my expenses are in a little different city somewhere. I still don't need all the money I'm making right now.
Yeah.
I can change my mind about this. And so what I decided is that maybe just a little context shift was in my best interest. And when I came home, instead of thinking to myself, you need $1 million business in order to have your own business, I thought to myself, well, what if I had $100,000 business?
Yeah.
Right? What if I had a $50,000 business? Those are complete. They can change your life. If you had a side hustle, right, to bring in tens of thousands of dollars a year, 30, 40 grand a year, for some people, think about it, that doubles their income on a side hustle.
Yeah.
And they are possible. It's completely viable to have side hustles that bring in that kind of income. And what some people do is they have these side hustles or they take on a project and they realize that they're fun. They're enjoying them. And their income greatly exceeds that. And then it's an easy choice. For those folks, I can see why, they quit their job and that's all easy. But for most of us, it's a harder decision than that because we're a professor or we're a pharmacist or we have some profession that pays us and we think, gosh, another 5 years and I'm going to get that extra rung and I'll be making 5 or 10% more in a year. And if you think that mindset, you'll just be trapped in it forever because your expenses go up more than 5% every couple of years.
Yeah. Of course.
Right. So you'll get trapped in it. You're not putting the brakes on fast enough to stop at the stop sign, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But that's kind of the mind shift that I love to talk to people about because one of my favorite things to teach people is for a long time, my wife and I did virtual assisting.
Oh yeah.
Cause I'm an accountant and a finance guy, by schooling.
I remember.
And my wife loves just projects, data entry, these things aren't that crazy, but what was crazy was hey, we wanted to meet some people. I had met people on my podcast. I was I really want to get to know them. How can I do this? And then one day I'm following them on their social media and they're hey, I'm looking for somebody who can keep a spreadsheet. And I was well, I know how to do Excel.
Yeah,
and this guy's really cool. and oh, by the way, he's going to pay me for it. You know what I mean? And people, and we were just, and I love what you said there, because this is what the biggest lesson I learned was our side hustle was fun. It brought my wife and I together. We made a little bit of money and we didn't need to make $100,000. We were cool with the extra 1,000 or 2,000. But then I asked people I go, what would an extra $1,000 a month do for you? And most people that I talk to would be that would be significant, either life-changing or pretty damn close. And so it's then why are we tripping over if my idea is not the next Amazon or Uber, then I don't want to do it. And I'm you're crazy. That's not real.
This is one of my favorite topics too. I'm glad that we're going down this rabbit hole because the first business that I started was not mine.
Okay.
It wasn't mine at all. I looked around and I had a bunch of ideas. None of them really felt, the risk reward profile was suitable. And I ran into a friend at the gym one night. And he'd opened a spa in our local neighborhood, and it was a nice place to go. And I'd been there and I enjoyed the experience. I traveled a lot, so I used massage therapy to keep my neck, there's, and I asked him how he got into it. And he goes, yeah, it's, they're pretty fun to run. That requires a lot of staff, but you and I both have management experience, so we could handle that. The rest of it's actually not that hard. They just need local representation for a business like this because it's so people oriented. And he said, I just bought my rights from a franchisor. And I'm like, franchising, it doesn't sound sexy, but unless, of course, it allows you to quit your job and not travel 3 days a week, and you can be your own boss, and like, there are actually a lot of reasons why it was sexy. I just couldn't get past the fact that it was someone else's idea at first. Because I thought to be an entrepreneur means that you've invented something. You have to be an innovator. It has to be your idea. It has to be Todd Randall Consulting, right? And so I just, my ego needed to get through it, I think.
Yeah, it's not. One of my favorite things, and I heard this a long time ago, I think, and I can't even remember who said it. I think it was maybe Tom Bilyeu, but this lesson stuck with me because I really heard that like maybe at the very beginning of my career, like 8 or 9 years ago. And he said that there's like 3 types of like people and 3 types of people. And the first 2 kind of fall in this entrepreneur category. And the first 2 were like, obviously like a founder, like somebody who has the idea and a trailblazer, things like that. But the second one he mentioned was a linchpin. And he's like, and the linchpins are why why Amazon, like, you know what I'm saying? Like Amazon wasn't only Jeff Bezos, like he had a bunch of people, you know what I mean? And he had like homies there. He had ride or dies there who were ready to go, like linchpins. And
that was Tom.
Those guys
his first company was not his idea at all.
Yeah.
He worked for somebody else, and he wasn't a senior executive to start.
Yeah. I mean, that's great.
He was good at what he did. He became an executive with a company, and so important to them that he got cashed out when the rest of them did. And then the rest of his entrepreneurship is history. But, he worked with other folks' ideas in that company. It's not to say that he wasn't instrumental. Right. It's just, it doesn't need to always be your idea when you start, right?
Exactly. And like, it's okay to like be a linchpin and help other founders. Like, that's kind of where I found myself, is like, I do have a lot of ideas. I have that entrepreneurial spirit, but man, I love to help other people and go, right? Like my favorite words are, dude, I hate sales and marketing and finance. And I'm like, that's it. Let's go then.
That's rough.
I go, cool. I don't need the idea, but if I can help and be a part of the team, like, that kind of, but you're, and on that same vein, you don't have to be a founder or an innovator to be an entrepreneur. Like, you can be part of the team. I think because that's hard. That's just as hard. Like when, we have a big company here in Utah that went public a couple of years ago, Lucid, and we have a lot of companies that go public, and this story is not unique to Lucid, but it was fresh in my mind because like there are people there who were there when it started 10 or 11, 12 years ago. And I would, when Lucid was 5 employees and they were all knocking doors, like, to me, that sounds very entrepreneurial. To me, that's like, it doesn't matter whose idea it was, like, we're all in it now.
No, I think here's the essence of entrepreneurship, or entrepreneurism for me, is that in a small company, when you're first starting something, it's a high adaptation environment. Very dynamic, fast moving, fast changing environment. And it requires people, like the people who thrive in that environment are problem solvers, where they're like, okay, we need a large office space and there's nothing big enough in town, so we need to build one. None of us here are contractors. We're an accountant, a chemical engineer, a teacher, and an ex-football player. But one of us has to take this project on to find a way to build a new building. And whoever has the bandwidth right now, has to just raise their hand and say, okay, great. Well, I was doing education programs, but I'll do it. And then you figure it out and you learn something in the process.
I love that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what entrepreneurship is. It was for me. Like, you and I approached this from the same angle. I was just a bureaucrat. I had managed teams before, and I knew stuff. I knew things about stuff. But if I'm going to walk into a spa, that was my first business, I don't bring any unique talent to that business. What I
Mm,
did is I filed permits and I built a building, which I'd never done before. And I hired a bunch of staff to do jobs that I'd never done before. Right.
mhm.
Um, and I established a franchise agreement and a leasing agreement with a landlord. And I'd never done that before. And I failed all over the place. I made all kinds of mistakes, but I walked into it with a confidence to know that these are skills. There's some basic skills that I need to learn. I can probably go for advice on some of it, but in some cases, I'm going to trip over myself, and that's okay. And you need to
Yeah.
just keep getting up the next day and working and working and working. And after a while, I built a basis of skills to run that business pretty well. And when I realized that, I opened another. That's all. Right.
That's awesome. No, it's a
Right.
great idea. Like I mean, I love the idea of it's okay not to have a sexy business. It's okay
Hmm.
to change your perspective on what it means to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like I was talking with a really good friend on here. He's since become a really good friend of mine. But I met him on the podcast, and he was
Right.
like, "How can you ever recognize $1 million idea if you don't fail at your $1,000 idea?" you know, I
Yeah.
go, I go, damn right, I guess so. Like, because you
Yeah.
don't. I mean, yeah. I mean, how do you know? You know,
Yeah, and just remember that an idea is not necessary.
right?
There are some people who've really accomplished their version of success by being a partner in a local law firm.
Mm,
And then realizing after a couple of years that their expertise was such that they could consult with that law firm for 20 hours a week and build a small apartment complex. And now they've got two different businesses, right? Or start
yeah,
coaching the softball team or start doing something else, right? They start
yeah,
becoming a more diverse business person, or they can start their own firm, or they can consult overseas. Maybe these people have a special interest in how law is practiced in Utah, right? Um, there are aspects of your business that you can just discover and grow, but you have to have a platform. That's the thing. You got to
mhm,
start with something. I had friends when I made this change, I was around 40. And I had been relatively successful in my business. And so I'd made other successful friends and, people that I was golfing with and lived next door to. Some of them were in big business. And when I told them I wanted to start a business, they had lots of questions about exit strategy and choosing the right business and everything. And I remember really getting into them a little bit. I said, look, you guys don't understand. Like when you're managing an institutional fund of $600 million and you're poring over documents to choose just the right companies to invest in, then yes, you have criteria for what's the best business for you and what your internal rate of return can or should be. I need a business,
mhm,
small a business. Like I can't get started until I have one. And if I
mhm,
have a business where I'm sweeping floors for somebody, or I'm picking up someone's groceries, or I'm answering phone calls for them, like unless I start something, I can't conceivably grow it. And if you have a great idea, then I say pursue it because that's the most fun way to do it. But I think for a
mhm.
lot of entrepreneurs, you just need a foundation. And what I did is I started a business. It was successful but overwhelming. So I opened up a second one and then started to manage my time better, where I was delegating more tasks. I had more senior people that could, operate the business without me. And that was my fire. My spark was, oh,
Mm.
scale creates distance for me. And
Ooh,
that was my revelation,
yeah.
right? Because I had two, I couldn't justify having like a seasoned operations officer for one business. There just
Mhm.
wasn't enough revenue to justify the position. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had an income. But when you have two, it starts to make sense,
Yeah.
or three or four. And so what I was willing to do, and this goes back to Paris, actually. How about that for coming full circle? So I had opened a second business and I thought, this is great because in both businesses now, they were running less successfully than if I was going to be in them 100%.
Mhm.
So you could say to yourself, well, Todd, you've just failed twice now. But let's do the math. Let's say I'm making 10 units from one business, right? And then I start to offload things and have someone with less experience than me running it. So now the business is only doing 8 units, right? But now if I have two of them, 2 times 8 is 16. It's not 10 anymore, it's 16. The question you
Yeah.
want to ask yourself is, do you want a business that runs 10 units per unit of time, or do you want a business that runs 16? Because two less efficient businesses, can take the same amount of time from you.
Ooh, yeah.
right? So I
Great
was one
point.
person, and now my revenue was 16 units per unit of time instead of 8, instead of 10. And so it was a 60% increase for me, just because of the way that I structured it. And
Yeah.
as soon as I kind of that settled in with me, like I thought I was going to open a second business and 200%
Yeah.
because I got two of them. It's just 100% times two, right?
Yeah. Right.
That's not how it always works because you're less personally involved. You're less authentically and sincerely involved in client care and staff care, and everybody notices that. Staff notice
Yeah.
it, and customers notice it. And so, and some people can do it. But I wasn't one of them, evidently. But even with the slight loss there, right? It's still as a business, was a step up for me. And I thought, well, great, then let's try 3 and 4 and 5. And
Oh, wow.
that was a key for me. And I've had
Yeah.
eight businesses since then. I've had at any one time I've had as many as 5 open. Um, and they can be, I'm sure that Mark Cuban sometimes gets up in the morning and has a hard time differentiating between his Christmas tree company and his, software gaming community and his real estate stuff and keeping them all straight. But for me, 5 started to be a little distracting. So I like to keep it smaller than that.
Yeah.
But it still gives me the remoteness that I need to pursue hobbies and sports and family and stuff like that.
Interesting. Okay. So that I had a revelation while you were talking.
Oh, good.
Because I like that. I like that idea. Scale creates distance, but
Mhm.
also it's cool because you said that it took you the same amount of energy to run 2 business as it did to run 1.
It really
And I
did.
heard, yeah, and I heard this from Grant Cardone, but he was talking about real estate, and
Hmm.
he said that it's harder to manage one property. Like it's easier to manage 50 properties than it is to manage one.
Yeah.
And I never
Def-
understood that. But when you put that in a business context, because it's true, like you're like, I'm just doing this twice. And yeah,
mhm.
it's like both are the same processes. So it's really one process for 2 locations, which, okay, if you got the right people in place, then go for it.
There are two things going on here that create economies of scale. The first one is that it creates room for you to involve specialists in your craft. Like if
Oh,
you open a small laundromat, you are repair the equipment. That's your job. You also get up at 5:30 in the morning and unlock the doors. And you run the registers. And when the tape is out of register, you go to Staples and you get a new one, right? And you answer the phone and you fix the air conditioning on top of the roof and you negotiate with the landlord. That's all you, right? If you have 11 laundromats, right, you can hire somebody that used to work for the company that makes the equipment, and that person's an expert at running equipment. And because they're an expert, you can hire them and know that the equipment's never going to break.
yeah. That makes sense though. That's cool because yes, scale creates distance because it creates room to bring in specialists and bring in other people to help you
Yep.
who
Uh,
know more about it. That's
the
cool.
other,
I like
the
that.
other, the other economy that at scale it brings to you is it allows you to learn something once and then practice it with a greater return the second and third time, right? Like the first time, if you were to run a marathon for the very first time in your life, it might take you a year to work up to the point where you can run 26 miles. Okay. But then it begs the next question. Look, if you want to run a second marathon, it doesn't take you a year at this point because you have some foundation. You have knowledge, you have nutritional,
Yeah.
and you have a base underneath you. And so even if you took a month off, it would not take you a year to run a second marathon. You could run 2 marathons in 14 months or 1 marathon in 12, right? So
Yeah.
there's an increasing return. And so in operations, this is also true where it could take you a long time to realize a sales process that works for you. Like we sell memberships at our gyms, right? So
Hmm.
people come in and they're like, I'm thinking about it. Maybe yes, maybe no. And we have a sales process. We walk them through and they help them understand all the benefits they'll get and why it's very affordable and high value. And we sucked at it for a little while until we got a process that really worked for us and everyone's happy. Well, once we figured it out, then we just apply it to all the gyms. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like we had, all gyms with bad sales numbers. And then we had one gym with good sales numbers. And just like that, all of our gyms had better sales numbers,
Yeah. It's
right?
true. Yeah, that's a good point. I really like that because
Mhm.
um I don't know why it never clicked, but for me, I'm glad we're having this conversation because for me, it's always been like, um, for me, it's always been like I've never wanted to get into real estate, but I love like learning about it. But it's just
Mhm.
I don't know. Maybe one day when when I don't have to be so like involved or something, I'll do it. But for now, it's just I don't know. But I like the principles, and what it was for me was taking those principles of like a real estate and just applying it to operations,
Yeah.
because it's like that's and I can see that I can understand how like yeah for me, I train salespeople, and it's way easier to train 100 salespeople than it is to mentor one.
Hmm.
And not only because if you train more, you make more, but also because like you can do it at scale and more people are benefited and yeah, all the processes can work and people
Hmm.
get going quicker.
Yeah, you're getting feedback, right? If
Yeah,
you're training 100 people, you get 60 people that are catching on, and normally 70% of them are catching on quicker. And so you think, okay,
sure.
there's something to dig into. You get a lot more feedback with 100 folks than you do one.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. I learned the
I,
same thing closing deals too.
I'm sure. I'm
It's really
sure.
easier it's really easy to juggle five. It's a lot harder if you only have one.
Hmm. Yeah. So, in summary, you and I are perfect examples of people that aren't innovators and
Yeah,
can run successful businesses that help sustain our families.
absolutely.
I feel like that's the lesson for beginner
Yeah.
entrepreneurs is that every marathon starts with a walk around the block.
Yes, absolutely. So now what do you do? Like you've gone through this and now what are your main businesses? What are your main uh kind of functions?
So I still have one gym that I really enjoy. Just love this. It's the best team I've ever worked with, and so I keep that one running if for no other reason to give them an outlet for their brilliance. That's in California. I have a fencing install company. We install a couple different types of fences in Florida where there's a lot of real estate being
Hmm.
built. I have a construction wholesale company. We have just 2 or 3 products that we supply to mostly the fencing industry, vinyl, chain, and aluminum, stuff like that. I do a coaching and consulting business, which is mostly a hobby. Like I'm a
Yeah.
businessman, right? So I run it like a business. I really enjoy it. I always thought I would retire and teach.
Hmm.
And universities are kind of in a weird spot right now. Declining
Yeah,
in prestige and function, I think.
I
And
think
so
so.
this is a more efficient way for me to coach and teach.
Yeah.
So I take on clients, people who have small businesses, and have gotten in over their head, and they just need someone with more experience to help work it out.
Yeah, I like yeah, that's true. But you know what's funny about that is the education industry is changing. And I was just having a conversation about this the other day. Because like I'm not a college basher, but I'm also not like I don't hate on it, but I also don't tell people like it's the only way. You know what I mean? I'm like right
Hmm.
there. I'm like if it's something you want to do it and like or if it's not, because I kind of play both sides of the fence. But the 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 problem with the whole college bashing thing right now is and why it's declining is obviously like there's not a whole lot of ROI, right? Because most of the ROI comes from just networking.
Yeah.
Um,
This is the
but
fundamental dilemma facing them right now. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
value,
exactly.
value. Hmm.
Yeah. And but you know what's funny is like the problem now is that we've kind of the inadvertent problem that I've seen now is all right, so people are like, don't go spend 50 grand to get a bachelor's degree. Cool. I agree with that. Um,
Hmm.
but now some people are in this mindset that like, because don't spend 50K because it's free on YouTube, right? And
Hmm.
I'm like, well, okay, here's the problem with that.
Hmm.
Because now nobody understands that you have to pay to play.
Hmm.
Like, because paying to play used to meant like go to college and then you get a good job, and now you know what I mean, we're good. But now
Hmm.
it's like, no, I
So
shouldn't have
by
to pay
that,
for the
do you mean
knowledge,
that?
right?
Do you feel like people are not paying their dues, or do you think that people are just learning to take the easy route and not investing time and the time and energy to learn things as thoroughly? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, exactly. So not taking the time, like, because one of the things I don't think you should go to school for is sales. Like, I don't think you need to go to college to learn how to sell. I think you
Hmm.
just need to sell. But the problem is, people who've never sold before think they should be in like an enterprise account executive and not start as an SDR, right? And they're like,
Yep.
well, I can learn enterprise account executive skills on YouTube. And it's like, well, no. And so now we're in this kind of
Yeah, it
struggle
just
that's
requires
like,
so much practice and refinement and
yeah,
coaching and
right.
feedback from good supervisors and stuff. I'll ask your opinion on this because I know you're a sales expert. I really enjoyed telemarketing back in the days when that was a thing,
Yeah.
because of the natural feedback capability there. Like I could have people listening to me and say, you did a great job establishing rapport. Your close was a little awkward. Maybe you could try a trial close instead and then do it
Yeah.
again and again and again. It's so much feedback.
Yeah.
How do you take someone now who wants to be in sales and get them through enough cycles where they can mature into a great account rep?
Well, I think it's a lot of it is starting with like prospecting. Um, because yeah, I like telemarketing too. Like, but we just called it something different. Like it used to be called telemarketing. Now it's
Yeah.
called cold calling. I don't know
Mhm.
what like it used to be
Yep.
like telemarketing. Now it's an SDR. So
Mhm.
I think you just make a bunch of phone calls. I also think, and what I do with people is like, we just practice. Like I just practice with them.
Yeah.
Like
Role
I'm the
play.
client. Yeah. Role
Role,
playing.
role play is the most underutilized tool in
hundred
sales and
percent.
management training, in my opinion. I just love it.
Yeah, and people are like, it's not real enough. And I was like, well, then you haven't role played with me because I'll make it, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and if you can pass it with me, like,
Mhm.
because y- what we do though is it's crazy because the reason I like role playing is if you get somebody who's really good at it, like a coach who knows how to like when to pull punch it or like, when to punch really hard
Yep.
and when not to, thing, that kind
Yep.
of thing. You get a lot of good feedback because what we do is like as salespeople, we catastrophize like, oh, they're gonna say no, they're gonna think I'm sleazy, and it's like, no, dude, actually, they're not thinking that. They're just wondering why the
Agree.
hell you interrupted them. And so that's easily resolvable by just telling
Hmm.
them why you interrupted
Yeah. Yeah.
them.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
That's such a good point about education because I think there's some things that really are better learned experientially
Hmm.
and some things that one can really learn out of a textbook. The problem with, or one of the fundamental issues with college is that so much of it is out of a textbook
Hmm.
that a person can graduate 4 years later without enough experiential learning to have much practical value to a company.
Yeah. And then we
Um,
get in this, route, whether you have a degree or you don't, right? Because somebody
mhm,
told you not to waste your money. Now we don't have this. I like some people feel like they're entitled to the degree, right?
mhm,
And some people feel like they learned enough on YouTube for free that they're entitled to the position. And
yeah.
it's like, neither is true. You have to
Hmm.
start at the bottom. So the thing is like don't go to college for things that you're going to have to start all the way at the bottom. Like
Hmm.
like an
Yeah.
SDR, don't go to school for sales. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
go get an SDR job, make 100 phone calls a day, write down all of the objections and start to learn. Find a mentor.
Yeah. Mentors are really important especially for those kind of jobs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's so many places you can go with it. There are some professions in the world that are such good launching pads that I recommend them to all my teenage and college age friends. I think sales is one of them. If
Yeah.
you can find a sales job with good mentorship, I think that's a really good way to go. Another one might be nursing, because most of healthcare, much of healthcare is led by nurse executives,
Hmm.
because no one understands. In the same way that many companies are run by sales executives, think about how many CEOs are vice president of sales. Many,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the reason is because they understand their customer's perspective better than other roles at the company. They have to. It's
Yeah.
their job to. And in healthcare, nurses understand the patient experience better than other folks in the system because they have to. It's their job
Hmm.
to.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah.
yeah, well, no, and that's funny because one of the things I teach in sales is like if I'm teaching somebody
Hmm.
is like there's a big thing in sales, like a divide, and maybe it's not as
Oh,
prevalent now, but you see kind of like sales trainers, and some are like I just like to teach people how to sell, and I like to sell. So like, am I an expert or like a Grant Cardone? I don't know, but I know that I can help people. But the
yeah.
thing is like when you look at some of these people, like there's a divide between like is product knowledge more important or is process more important or something like that. And I
Hmm.
just tell them neither, like because before I'll ever teach you about your product, you should know about your customer because like sales is
Hmm.
not about you. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, yeah.
you you should learn about what makes your customer tick. because if I can do that, because here's the thing, like, where did all these like closer Bibles come from? Like, in my opinion, it came from trying to convince people who didn't need your product that they needed your product. And to me, that's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want it and I understand it, like I might have to like persuade you and influence you. Like, that's part of this process, sure. But like, you it shouldn't be a fight. Like, you know what I mean? It shouldn't be
No.
this extremely hard,
Yeah.
if they're ready for you.
The best sales folks in my experience at big companies were one of two types of people. One is the natural people person, because they understood people well enough to understand what their motivations were, and
Yeah.
connected with them in a friendly way that allowed them to go through the sales process easily. And not everyone, buys from them, but the people who are well suited for the product enjoy the process, and many of those folks do buy. The
Yeah.
next
Okay. Yeah.
the next best kind of salesperson, actually on equal footing, is the scientist. The scientist is someone who says, well, there is a process, and that process is understanding what the customer needs, understanding how our product provides that value, conveying it in a way that everybody can digest it. And those folks, they have 100 steps, and they have certain graphics and pictures and spreadsheets that make the point. And because they're so detail oriented, they don't miss any steps. And I think
Yeah.
both of those folks can succeed. The problem is if you if you're the natural born social person and you try to become the scientist, sometimes that's a conflict. It's really hard for you to be that detail oriented.
Yeah.
And you skip steps and you lose your natural fluidity, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a scientist and you try to, be the social butterfly, that's not a natural tendency for you either, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think one of my process for selling is just empathy. And I love
Yeah.
that, because anybody can adopt that. Like, you can be a scientist, you can be a people person, but if you just like give a shit about somebody else besides yourself
Yeah.
and besides like your goals, you're going to get a lot further in your life than
Yeah.
what that means,
And
and
keep the world that way.
yeah. Right, exactly. And so,
Yeah.
you know what's so funny, I just heard this, I don't know why, a guy I really admired, but this is why I have friends like this. I really admire him, I agree with 90% of what he does, but the 10% I like vehemently disagree on. And one of the things was, he was like, empathy is like the thoughts and prayers of like the world. And I was like, and he made his argument, and I thought it was fine. Like, but I was like, I think you missed the point of like empathy, because empathy doesn't work unless you do. Literally, like work, right? Like, you have to like, real empathy is like sharing the feelings of another person, understanding and sharing the feelings of another person.
Yeah.
But like also helping them along, and coaching them through things, and like, providing value, whatever they find value in. And so it was just funny though, but I appreciated it. It made me think, because that's why I like people who disagree with me a lot. And I like people who make me question everything, is because you're like, then you have to justify it. And for me, if I can't justify it, then I'm like, oh, I guess I need to do more homework, or I guess it was something I need to move on from.
Yeah. I've had a few sports coaches in my life, and one of the things that they try to incorporate in my training is to have me teach the basics to someone less experienced than me. And the premise is you don't really understand it until you can teach it. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've gone and I've tried to teach the basics to someone as an experienced player in a handful of sports, and I can't. And in doing so, and learning how to teach them, I learned something fundamental about my form or my, athletic endeavors that can be improved.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that a lot. Well, I got so much, so many good things from this conversation.
Oh,
And
good.
I
Yeah,
really
this is fun.
appreciate your time, Todd. But before I let you go, of course, what I would love for you to share how everybody can find you, and if
Yeah,
maybe they're curious about your consulting, or if they're
of course.
listening in Florida, where they can find you.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for that. So I have a consulting and coaching practice, and the best way to reach me there is beachview.biz. It's my website. Beachview, be like Bravo, EACH, VIEW, and biz is .biz, Bravo, Indigo Zebra. Also in Facebook, I have a Facebook group called Real Business Coaching. And if you just look in the Facebook groups, it's easy to find. And we really try to focus on folks that are trying to have some kind of sustainable living. It's a good side hustle for them, or something that they support themselves with. with their consulting and coaching. And so there are a lot of practical things we try to do with that group. We have some group calls, and I do a lot of one-on-one stuff with folks in there. So those are the two best ways to reach me.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Todd. I really appreciate you coming on.
Dalton, it's a pleasure. Nice talking to you, man.
Hey, everybody, it's Dalton again, and I wanted to introduce you to my sales group mastermind. This is for business owners and sales consultants who want to learn the lifeblood of business. Look, the reality is if you're selling to somebody and it's face-to-face, or you got to jump on sales calls, or you have to learn how to persuade and influence people in your business every day, this is the mastermind group for you. We'll have trainings every week. We have a full sales training course that'll take you through it. And most of all, you don't have to break any of your morals or your ethics to learn how to sell in my course. So we focus on empathy-based sales techniques and persuasion and influence that is based on helping and serving other people, because reciprocity in business is probably one of the most effective tools to win over your clients. So with all that being said, you can join at empatheticselling.com. You can sign up for a full year, or you can go month to month. Either way, it's great. And I look forward to seeing you on the inside. Thank you so much.